Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. This video is going to involve a lot of editing, but that's my bit, you don't need to know, but there will be little breaks. What we're going to do is have a look at the Cymbidiums, but we're going to have a close look. Yeah, so I need the camera handheld and I need to pick up each one in turn and move it to my workbench so that I can have a good look at it, and that will mean putting the camera down. Yeah, so you can see there's going to be a lot of bits and pieces, but each plant's going to have a good look over. We're just checking over for health, really, growth that's happened during the year, an assessment of how well the plant's done, and in addition to that we will be playing Hunt the Spikes, because at least one of them should be starting spikes in the not too distant future. And the thing is, they're still drying out since they came in from outdoors. They're still quite heavy, some of them, so they're still wet. And until they dry out, obviously I'm not watering them. And if I'm not watering them, I'm not picking them up. So I'm not even looking at them. They haven't been looked over since they were brought in, or since the thing collapsed and they fell off. So we're going to have a good look at the Cymbidiums. And the next set of plants we're going to have a look at, which will be next week now, because we've got our Sunday chat tomorrow, will be the Cymbidiums, because we've got spikes pushing on there. And again, I'd like to assess them as a group. Yeah. Hopefully these videos work okay. As I said, it does mean each plant's going to get a fade in and a fade out. But at that point we can do the pop-up of the name and a picture of the blooms if I've got one. Yeah, so we can do them, you know, as quite an elaborate video. And as I said, it gives me quite a bit to do with the editing, but it's autumn coming towards winter. What else am I going to be doing? Sitting playing with the videos for me is fun. I enjoy it. It's IT stuff, you know, and occasionally I have to work out something new in the software, look it up on YouTube. Don't ever struggle with software. If you've got a problem, go on YouTube and put the question in and there'll be a video showing you how to do it, or 6. So it's worth doing, definitely, any problem you've got. There's bumping and banging and clattering going on next door and outside the house. The final clear out has started next door. As I said, I heard a vehicle on the drive. I always have a quick look out to see what's going on. It's a shared area, you know, and I know the house is empty next door, so who is it? Like, you know, it won't be anybody to do with me. Anyway, strange vehicle, so I went out and had a look. Guy from next door's out there with 2 mates. They're having a proper clear out now. I think he said he's taken everything he wants, so everything that's left is effectively to be cleared away. And it started, and he said the new people should be moving in sometime next week. So I will have my new neighbours next week. I just hope they're not a noisy crew. You know, I mean, I keep myself to myself. I'm not, you know, I'm not a nuisance neighbour or anything. I just like quiet. That's all I really ask of anybody, is just non-excessive noise. Everybody has to make some noise, you know. I mean, if you're going to use a lawnmower, it makes a noise. That's work. I might be okay with that sort of thing, you know. But it's unnecessary noise, shouting, silly loud music, parties at 2 o'clock in the morning, you know. And I've got a brother-in-law that just can't help it. It's how he is. When people leave his house, it could be 1 o'clock in the morning. He has to come out to say goodbye. And it's goodbye to the car 100 yards up the road. Bye, 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 see you again, bye. Irrespective of the time of night, you say goodbye inside the house and then people leave. Gentle wave. Unnecessary noise. Dogs barking. I don't know whether they've got a dog. I don't know. I know they've got a couple of kids. Apparently they've got twin girls. The guy next door said they're that high. Well, that could be anything from 8 to 12, couldn't it? Or even, you know. So I don't know. But hopefully I shall meet them next week. I shall introduce myself. And even if it hasn't been done, I shall explain the driveway, because I don't want my car getting blocked in. I don't want my side of the carport having anything in it that belongs to anybody else, and access must be there at all times for both parties. And if you've got a reason to block me in or anything like that, let me know. We'll make arrangements. Yeah? So, and hopefully he's going to clear that shed out the front. I haven't worked out what I'm going to put in it yet, but it's another place for me to store stuff, because my shed is you know, there's not much room in there now. It's with the shelf, it's got shelves and stuff, but there's a lot of stuff stacked against the shelves on the floor where there isn't enough room in there. So we'll shift some stuff out there. I'll have to get a lock on it. But yeah, so new neighbours coming up. Right, so I'll take the camera off the tripod, we'll get the first plant down, and as I said, we're going to have a good look over these plants, see how they are, see the progress of the growth and everything. And today it's the Cymbidiums, and then sometime next week it will be the Coelogenes, and maybe we'll move on to other things. But those are two reasonable groups of plants, yeah? So the only watering I'm doing today is the Phalaenopsis, and that can wait till I finish filming this. It's early in the day at the moment, but it's also, I think, the temperature's definitely changing now. There's no way I'm getting up in the morning without popping the heating on for a couple of hours. It's just too cold. You know, the house was down to 17 when I came downstairs. That's too cold to be sitting around in, so the expense has started, as they say. What was the other thing I was going to say? The other thing I was going to say was done next door, done what we're going to do next. Oh yes, gardening video yesterday, bringing the channels, multiple channels and things like that together into one place. If that video is anything to go by, has already worked. That video's probably got 100 more views than it would have got on the other channel. So the idea of having everything under one roof appears to be working. Now I know there will be people here that are here for the orchids, don't want to look at gardening stuff, don't want to look at bonsai stuff. But the concept is, if they're here all under one roof, those that are interested in all of it don't have to go somewhere else because it's here. And in addition to that, those that are here, if it's put under their nose, who knows, they'll watch it and they might even enjoy it. So that's why. But if that one video is anything to go by, then it's already working, so it's already serving a purpose. Anyway, let's get on and look at some orchids. That's what this video is about. Okay, this is the first one. This is a biggie. It hasn't filled the pot yet, but it's not far off, and it's one of the bigger pots as well. Now, growth on this plant, it has pushed up a lot of new growths. Many. I'm not going to count them. It's just, you know, some are still maturing. Yeah, so they haven't even formed their big bulb yet, whereas some have. Health of the plant, I would say, is good. Oh, hang on, we're going to have to come out. So I'm using my tripod so that I can turn things. We have a few spots. This is not that unusual on Cymbidium leaves. I nearly said Oncidiums then. Don't get many Oncidiums this size. But as I said, some of the new growths haven't matured properly yet. Try and get all the oak leaves out as I go round. But nonetheless, the health of the plant is pretty good. It's grown well. There's stacks of roots in the pot, including some trying to get out. There's a root tip there coming upwards, but it's trying to turn over and go back down again. So I'm pleased with this one. The progress on here is good. Now this is just a hybrid, no ID, and it's the bronzy coloured one. And if we start here, because it's obvious, and reasonably, now I'm not one of these that goes mad trying to identify the difference between spikes and new growths. I just have a look at, when did this one last bloom, yeah, and this one ought to be one of the earlier spikers. So that is highly likely to be a spike. If it's a new growth, so be it, but it would be a strange time of year for this plant to be putting up a new growth. Shorter days, cooler temperatures, it's unlikely to be a growth. It's more likely to be a spike. So that's one just to the right of the label. And we'll go round slowly. We've got another one here. So again, they both look the same. They're both on, you know, bulbs that have grown this year and matured around the outside of the plant. That's two. See, this one here looks like it ought to have one. Has it? Nope, not yet. Whoops. I've definitely got another one here. And now I can tell this one's big enough. Let's get down sideways. This one's big enough to be able to tell. How do you tell? Just gently, very gently squeeze the tip, and it should be soft, hollow. If it's a spike, it's hollow because this isn't the spike. It's the sheath that surrounds the spike. The spike will come out the top of this as it grows. So that's three so far. And it looks like that's all so far. But that's not all the new growths. That's just the three most mature new growths. As you can see, this one's growing a reasonable bulb here with a spike. So we've still got bulbs that are maturing, that haven't matured properly yet. They may push up a spike, you know, in a month's time. Who knows? They might not. They might be blind. They'll just put strength into the plant. So at the moment on this one, we've got three spikes. I'm pretty confident they are all spikes. I can't see any in the middle of the plant, but that would be the older part of the plant. So that's the first one. I'd say I've got one manky leaf up here. I'll trim that off. But apart from that, there's a yellow leaf over here. That could do with cutting off at the base. I'm not going to muck about with it now because I want to get on. Well, actually, I will do it now. While I've got the plant down, it'll be easier than when it's back up on the bench. So that's that one. That's one. And now let's move on to the next one. Right, the next one to come down, and although this sounds like a daft expression, it's not as daft as you think. This is my giant miniature. What do I mean by that? The leaf size indicates this is a miniature, but on the larger side of a miniature Cymbidium. Why it looks so big is because it's got so many bulbs on it, there are so many leaves on it, and it's in quite a big pot. And that is a snail. Was a snail. So I've got to keep my eye out for snails. That felt dry, as though it has dried up, so it was probably dead anyway. So this is Cymbidium tiger tail. This has lovely blooms on this one. Health of the plant. Yellow leaf here. Signs of surgery in the past. I don't think that was me, because that looks like it's been torn, not cut. I'd always cut a leaf. That could be me. So, yeah, another yellowing leaf over here. Apart from that, health of the plant's pretty good. This has grown an awful lot of new growths, and they're not all round the side of the pot. Some of them are in the middle of the pot. But nonetheless, there are a lot of them. And they're not mature. Yeah? So we haven't got any mature new growths on here. And I'm pretty confident that most of the latest previous growths actually bloomed. So I don't expect to see any spikes on this one. And just going round. These growths are too young. But the other thing I'm noticing straight away, as I said, we'll be looking at the health of the plant. Look where the new growths are. They're touching the pot. If they're not touching it, they're very, very close. So this is going to have a repot. Not now, it'll have a repot after the next blooming. So that's going to have to go in an even bigger pot or split it. It's incredibly difficult to sell Cymbidiums because there are very few orchid people that want them because of their size. They're not an ideal plant to be growing in the house. They're brilliant for a conservatory, and if you've got a specialist greenhouse, you're probably limited on space. So they're not that easy to get rid of, no matter how smashing the blooms are or anything like that. It's irrelevant. They're difficult to shift. So if I split it, I end up with two large plants to look after. So I think I might just try, if possible, to get a bigger pot and just grow it on into a super specimen, you know. I can ask round and see if there would be anybody interested in some Cymbidiums. Some people might be. They might have stacks of space, or they're new to collecting and have a suitable cool area to keep them in. We'll see. Anyway, health of that one pretty good. No new spikes. Too early for this plant. You know, the bulbs are nowhere near maturing yet. So we'll class this as a later bloomer. This is going to be a spring bloomer rather than midwinter or late winter. It'll bloom in the spring. Some Cymbidiums bloom in the spring and last into early summer. So you have got a long blooming period. If you've got a selection of Cymbidiums, you can have them in bloom from literally early December right through into June. You know, if you've got a selection of plants with different blooming periods, which there are out there. Anyway, pleased with that one. It's done well. And this is my only concern. It has some strange little marks on two leaves. But something's got on there. That's insect damage, I suspect. Something's got on there and had a nibble as it crawled around and taken the surface off. Nothing to worry about anyway. So that's that one. Oh, I'm having to stand right back for this one. This is my biggest Cymbidium. It is a monster. It's also in the biggest pot. There is still a bit of room for some growth on this one in that pot. That still weighs a ton. That's still soaking wet. Yeah? Which implies the pot's perhaps a bit too big for the size of the plant, but it won't be. The plant will grow into that. It's a vigorous plant. This one came from Burnham's. It's a good bloomer when it gets round to it. Health of the plant, pretty good. Growths are pushing on nicely. Spiders' webs. I'm going to have to, next time I get the hot box on, any spiders that have come in will probably go missing. Not sure whether I'm expecting to find spikes on this one or not. Well, I haven't started looking yet. I'm just looking at the general health of the plant. Obviously some leaves have been trimmed here on this old bulb, but that old bulb pushed out a nice new growth here. New growth here. There's lots of new growths on this plant. Plenty. So it's done well. I'm just trying to see if this is a new growth or an old one. Because that, you know, if this was a new growth this year, then that ought to be thinking about spiking, given its size, but I don't think it is. I think that's a previous growth. This is more like what the new growths look like, and they're too small to be spiking. So again, this one needs to mature its new growths more before we expect to get spikes. They're still pushing on. So health of the plant, pretty good. Massive plant. This one will have a bit of this on it, because this one was the one on the left hand side of the bench, the staging, when it was outside. It's the one that got the sun for the longest during the day, and you can tell that by looking at the label, because it's completely faded. So a bit of a monster. It bloomed well when I got it. Blooms lasted a long time. It was in bloom a long time. Hopefully we will get something similar next year, but this is one that we're going to have to wait for, this one, I think. A biggie. Okay, this is another large-sized Cymbidium, but isn't large yet. But it will be. It will grow into a much larger Cymbidium. This ended up being a division unintentionally. Also, in addition to that, this is the one that was the conundrum. When it turned out I had totally different coloured blooms in the same pot. This came from Mather's out of the private collection. It's a long story, not doing that now. But basically we had a beautiful Cymbidium in bloom that I bought and another spike growing on. And when the spike opened, long after the other blooms had gone, it was a totally different colour. I sent some pictures in and it was deemed that I had two different plants in the same pot. And then we decided that no, we didn't, because basically it was the same plant. But where I got it out of the pot to repot it, I pulled it and it came apart. So although this had different coloured blooms, it is probably highly likely to be the same plant as the one that was in bloom when I bought it. That's a quick version of the story. So this one says Cymbidium hybrid cream, whereas in actual fact that's not the true colour of this plant, and it was deemed it was probably feed and light that had messed up the blooms. Some are colour sensitive. Anyway, as a plant we ended up with two old bulbs here, and the bulb at the front has pushed out two new growths which have grown on nicely this year. They're plumping up nicely, but there's no sign of spikes on either of these two yet. This might not bloom. It might not bloom. It's only got two bulbs backing it up, but both of those backup bulbs are fully leaved. So there is a fair bit of backup to those two new growths as far as strength in the plant is concerned. So we may get a spike, we might get two. I'm hopeful, but you know, relatively it's a new division and these are its first new growths. Same again. I'm confident this is insect damage because it's on the surface. So whatever, you know, as I said, there's all sorts of things it could be. It's outside, you know, it's subject to anything that wants to have a munch. But it's not serious. It's not serious enough to sort of start cutting leaves off or anything like that. So that's that one. Reasonably healthy. The two new growths have pushed on nicely, and we may get a spike on it. And if we do get a new spike on it, it's had the light, it's had the proper feed this year, and it will carry on being fed. If it does push a spike up, we will confirm once and for all if it truly was a separate plant or not. But that remains to be seen. That's that one. And in the story that went with the last one, this is the other one. This is the one it was a division of. This is the Cymbidium copper that I was talking about. So in theory, that plant we've just looked at should have been part of this plant. Looking at the size of the new growths and what this plant actually looks like, you know, I'm thinking maybe we have got a separate plant here. But what I am worried about, this is the one that had the scale when it came back in, and you can see the marks that the scale have left. That's one problem. That is a totally different problem. That looks like signs of a virus to me. Mosaic virus. And it is possible. It could have got it. See, there's still some scale on here. I've still got some work to do. These are brown scale. They come off really easily. They're nowhere near the menace that the Bois Duval scale are, which is the other type I've got in the grow room. But this came in with that scale. I did, you know, I had a good go at it. Got rid of everything I could see. But with scale, it's highly likely they're going to come back. They can get down right in the crevices. It was sprayed. It's due a second spray. But it's always better with scale if you can manually remove them. You can spray them as well, you know, go the whole hog, because they are a nuisance to try and get rid of totally. So do the job, but remove any that you can see. And then, you know, see there's a few there that have come back. But it's only a couple, you know, considering this was covered. But I'm more interested in this patterning on the leaves. Don't see we got another one with a virus. Bearing in mind that did come out of a private collection, but I have a Cymbidium with a virus that's been kept separate. Certainly hasn't been near anything else when repotting's been going on. It didn't share water when it was in here. It's now outside where it's staying. It either survives the winter or it doesn't. But it is still possible that it's transferred. So I'm now going to have to keep this one away from the others, and when I water the Cymbidiums, this one will always get watered last, so that the water doesn't get shared with anything else. Most viruses do not spread through sharing water. They share through physical damage, through wounds, you know, so damaged tissue. So they get in through, you know, damaged roots, damaged leaves, mainly through our, you know, not cleaning and sterilising our tools between plants. So, you know, even simple things like cutting a leaf off of one plant, you've got juice from the plant onto your cutting tools, and then you go and cut another leaf on a different plant. That's where you get the cross-contamination, the possibility of it anyway. So those are the sort of things you need to watch out for. I mean, strictly speaking, it pays to keep some alcohol in a glass, or a bleach solution or something. And every time you use your scissors on Cymbidiums, which are quite prone to viruses compared with a lot of other orchids that are Oncidiums, Cattleya types, Cymbidiums are the worst. Yeah, I mean, things like Cotylogenes, very rare to get a virus with one of them. Dendrobiums, incredibly rare. So there are some, and they're not immune, but it's rare. Whereas Cymbidiums are those that are up the front of the queue. If there's a virus going, they're probably the first to get hold of it. And this could be that. And it might not be. Yeah, it might have reacted to too much sun. Bearing in mind it's on one side of the plant and not on the other side, that's a possibility. Anyway, that is the Cymbidium copper. The new growths have got no signs of spikes. As far as the health of the plant is concerned, it's now dubious. Well, that's where we are with that one. So that one's now got to be kept separate and watered separate, just in case, and we'll see how it develops. If it is a virus, it will get worse. It'll stay the same or get worse. It won't get better. No cure. There is no cure. So it's no good saying spray it with this, spray it with that, do this, do that. If it's a virus, genuine, it has no cure. The plant can still live with it and still bloom. It can still be okay, but if it gets into another Cymbidium that's rather weak, it could take it down. So you have to be careful. That's that one. Bit of bad news, I suppose. And this is my proper miniature, the genuine article. This is Cymbidium Showgirl. It's the only Cymbidium I've got that's got one of these, which is the genuine back bulb that you can actually separate and use to propagate your plant, providing it's really firm and solid and healthy and showing no signs of rot. Otherwise you're wasting your time. And it is time to take that off and grow a new plant, given how many new growths it would produce per year. First year 1, second year probably only 1. You're looking at probably 4 years to get that into the size of a plant that could produce a spike. Maybe even 5 years. So time. If you've got that time and the space, then have a go. But who knows? Right, so this one, it had 2 bulbs on when I got it. The following year it grew this nice big fat one that plumped up nicely. This year it's pushed out 2, but it's pushed out one from the latest growth and one from the previous growth, which is unusual. So 2 new growths on this one, too young to be spiking yet. This one has always been in, well, since I got it, it's been in bloom for our spring show, which is the second Saturday in March. So it's a regular period for it to bloom. So there's no point in even thinking about looking for spikes on it yet. This is going to spike after Christmas into next year. So anyway, it's grown on well. It's looking good. We've got no signs of any strange markings on the leaves or anything. And the 2 new growths are starting to plump up their bulb, and hopefully they will progress. This bulb carried on swelling up after it had finished blooming. So that, so that's a trait of this particular one. So yeah, one of my name Cymbidiums and a genuine miniature. If you put that next to the other one that I said is a giant miniature, these leaves on that latest growth are exactly the same size as that other plant. And yet, if I call this one a miniature, you would agree. When I call the other one a miniature, a lot of people are probably frowning and thinking, well, that's not a miniature at all. It is. The leaves and the bulbs are the same size. It's just that that one's in a giant pot because it's a much bigger plant. Deceptive. So that's that one. Showgirl. Standing well back again. This is another one of the giants. And this has actually got a name. This is Jamie Red. What on earth? Why would I do that? What a silly label. I've done Cymbidium hybrid Jamie Red. Well, with a name like Jamie Red, it's highly unlikely to be a species, is it? I wouldn't normally do that. I would just do Cymbidium Jamie Red. Obviously needed more coffee or was tired, one of the two. Anyway, this is the back view of the plant. This is another one of the giants. And because of the size of the bulbs it produces and where the new growths are, it might have to be repotted next year. If you see, look, it's pushed up a new growth right in the middle of the plant against this bulb here. If you look at the size of this bulb, we're looking at very large bulbs on this plant. Got quite a few new growths. Another one round here hanging out the side, another one here, so that's 3 looking at it from this side. And then we've got, this is a new growth here, absolute monster, but it hasn't swollen up enough to have its full-size bulb yet. Neither have the others. So we've got 4 very large, strong new growths. Have we got 4 or 5? 4. So in theory, we should get 4 spikes. But these new growths haven't finished growing yet. They're still pushing up leaves. So it's highly unlikely, it's not even worth looking for spikes on these new growths yet. It's too soon. They are still growing, they're still pushing up new leaves, they're still actively growing. And they've got some swelling up to do on the bulbs if you look at the size of the older bulbs. So the new growths relative to the old, they've got some work to do. So still growing. Nonetheless, it's not a bad plant. Brown scale on this one as well. So they've managed to transfer to this one. That was inevitable. While they were all outside, most of the leaves were touching. So you get scale on one plant. It's highly likely there'd be some somewhere else. But on this plant, I've just had a look round, there's 1. I'm not playing around going over the whole plant for 1. It's not worth it. If necessary, if I start seeing them, sort of thing. You can tell I'm relatively casual about this scale. It's because it's the brown scale. They die pretty easy. They're not that difficult to get rid of. They can spread, they can be a nuisance, but unlike the Bois Duval scale, first of all, these tend to leave a little mark if they stay on the leaf long enough, but that's the extent of their damage. The Bois Duval scale, the other type that I've got, has toxins within it that it implants as it nibbles your plants and it bites in through the surface. The plant is effectively being injected with those toxins. And if there's enough scale on a weak plant, they can kill it. These can't. They can't do that type of damage. They haven't got that level of toxin or anything like that. But they do leave little marks on your leaves, which is unsightly. But that's all. Yeah, they're not going to take your plant down. But don't let them get out of hand. Don't get blasé and sort of think, oh, they don't do harm. Roger says they can't kill your plant. Yeah, well, they can do it some nasty damage cosmetically. And it would weaken the plant, just don't let them hanging around. Don't let them hang around. So anyway, that's the last one in here. The only other one is outside, and it's Hannah's one. And to complete the video, we'll now take a wander out there, and I'll just have a quick look at it. It's definitely got a virus. It is virused, I'm confident. And Hannah's agreed it's not worth the risk of it coming in here. So she's happy that it stays outside. It either survives the winter or it doesn't. It's as simple as that. But it's not gonna, looking at it, it looks quite heavily virused. It's quite bad. So it could transfer a lot easier because of the strength of the virus in the plant. So we'll go outside and have a quick look at that. Right, so it lives out here. It spent an amount of the summer sat on the tree stump, but once we started having those long periods of rain, it was just getting absolutely soaking wet. So it's gone back under the table now, and being under the table, it's sheltered from any hard frosts. If we get temperatures well below zero, it's going to freeze. But it's not going to just get frosts on the leaves. It's protected. This is the new growth. You can see it's very virused, and it's on every leaf on that new growth. So there's no doubt about it. That doesn't mean to say it won't bloom. It could still actually bloom, but even if it blooms, it's not coming back indoors. Hannah's quite happy for it to stay out here and either live or die. It can please itself. It's a shame, actually. The blooms are nice, but oh God, it's the guy next door clearing up. So that's where it lives, and that's where it stays now until next spring, when it might come out and get a bit more light if it's still alive, and if it's not, then tough. So, and that's the lot. That's the end of the Cymbidiums. Now, because there is a potential, this is definitely virus, so I have every confidence in that. Obviously, I've now got to wash my hands, definitely, and with the potential for the start of a virus on one of my others, we now have to start handling that with the expression kid gloves. In other words, when I handle that plant, anything to do with scissors or hands needs to be sterilised before I move on to anything else, which is a nuisance, but in theory you ought to be doing that for every single plant. Every time you cut a leaf, every time you cut a bulb or a root, you should re-sterilise between that and any other plant. That's what you should do. Most of us don't and get away with it, but it will catch you out sometimes, and it may catch you out on your favourite plant. So if you don't do that routine, you take the risk. It's your risk. It's up to you. Right, and on that on that warning shot, we'll finish this one up. That's my Cymbidiums, and how they've progressed through the year. And we have one that's spiking, and at the moment that's all. There are no other spikes, but on some of them, hopefully you've seen why it's obvious they're not spiking yet, because they're nowhere near mature enough. The new growths are still growing, they're not mature, and until they are, they won't spike. So those will spike next year, so or midwinter on into spring. That's the time when we will get all our lovely Cymbidium blooms, with any luck. See you next time. Bye for now.